Hey there, and welcome to this video. In this video I will be talking about 3 ways that you can actually make a decent and really good living writing and producing music. And just to point it out, none of these 3 ways are either the best or the only way to make money in music. There are so many ways to make money in music. But these are the 3 ways that I personally know about and make a pretty good living on. So I can actually talk a bit about it and hopefully you can learn some stuff. So if you haven't already, get out your favorite beverage and let's get knocking on these 3 ways to make money. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about is basically commissioned music. And boiling this down to what it actually is, it's, let's say you have a video game developer who needs you to score the music or write a soundtrack or do some beats or whatever you do. Then you get commissioned work, meaning that they pay you a fee to do a certain amount of work for that fee. And from on there are no more money to be made from that gig. You could go into where you work out a deal where you have the rights to sell the soundtrack and make some royalties on that down the line, or you could split it with the developer or movie director or whoever you're working with. There are many ways to work out these deals, that's for sure. The only thing I have to say about commission music is that it is probably one of the most tough or hardest ways to get to a point where you make a decent amount of money on it. Mainly because you have to work your way up the ladder, meaning that you have to start out with smaller productions and smaller indie games, which more often than not don't really have that much of a budget, if there even is a budget. But on the other side of that, when you have actually gone up the ladder and start to get some really cool work, it's actually one of the most personally and creative, rewarding ways to earn a living with music, because you can just be yourself for the project. And it's kind of like writing music for yourself, but kind of dialing it in to work with whatever the visuals are for the project you're working on, basically. So that's my number 1 way, because it's the most fun and most rewarding, but don't forget it's very hard to get to the top. And I'm not saying that I'm at the top at all. I've worked on some really cool titles and are working on cool titles right now, but there's a long way to go if we have to get up to the greats. Let's call them that. On to point 2. The second way to make money with music, and probably what I would say would be with time, the most stable way to make music, and probably the best way to make music, financially speaking, is production music. And production music basically is music made for these publishers or music libraries that deliver music to different kind of TV shows and documentaries and reality shows, and even some Netflix productions use a lot of library music these days. The thing about library music is that it's gonna take a very long time before you see any money of your work, because you are mainly paid in royalties, which means that whatever music gets placed in whatever documentary or TV show it gets placed in has to play on these certain channels and TV channels and so forth for a certain amount of time before your PRO actually collects the royalties from these different TV stations and whatnot. The thing about it is that when you actually get around to having firstly a lot of music out into the industry, and then actually starting to get some royalties for your placements, that's when some of the really good money can actually start to roll in. So it's certainly not a bad investment of time, but it will require a lot of free time before you see any money. Third one, so the last thing I am gonna be talking about is basically still production music in some way, but on a much higher level. And this is called trailer music. And for every single trailer you have watched, there are sometimes just one, but many times multiple tracks placed in these different trailers, and different sound effects and drones and stems from different tracks. And it's a whole jungle, but if you're interested in trailer music, you should really check it out. It's really cool. The thing about trailer music is that just as normal production music, it's gonna be some time before you see some placements. And I'm not saying this to be a downer in any way. I'm just saying this as a precaution if you actually want to get into this kind of work. When I started out in trailer music, I pretty much wrote and released with different publishers probably around 100 tracks before I saw my first placement, which wasn't even a full track placement. It was just a small sound design placement. As far as I remember, it was one of those boom sounds, which made a good amount of money just for that boom sound. But patience is key when it comes down to trailer music, that's for sure. The very cool thing about trailer music is that when you actually land a full track, or maybe even just 30 or 60 seconds of your track, we are talking very big money for your placements. I haven't personally got any placements of this substantial size, but I've heard about 6-figure placements for one track. And I don't know about you, but in my world, that's a whole lot of money. So doing trailer music, even though the wait can be very, very long and draining, the reward in the end is very cool. Also, when you get to see your music used in the Marvel universe, for example, that's, well, of course, besides the big fee you get out of the sync placement, just having your music in a Marvel thing is fantastic. It's the best feeling ever. So if you think trailer music is actually for you, go for it, man. It's so cool. It's the best. It's one of those kind of well, almost genres of music where you get to be as loud and crazy and obnoxious as possible, because it has to sound big and nasty, huge and epic at the same time. And you many times layer what would in the real world be 4 different orchestras on top of each other just to get that insanely big sound. But it's so fun, because no matter what genre you're into, if it's rock, if it's orchestral, if it's sound design, horror stuff, there's place for you in the trailer music world. So if it sounds interesting to you, I suggest starting to Google and YouTube this stuff. It's really cool. But know that you need to have a certain amount of patience, because it's probably gonna be some time before you see any reward from your work. With that said, that's my 3 ways of making a living with music. There are, as I said, many other ways, and it's all about finding your path and what you are passionate about. But if you're interested in getting into any of these 3 ways I've talked about, feel free to leave a comment, or even better, message me or comment on my Instagram, which is Sigurd the Music Dude. I'm much better at looking there than on YouTube, because I'm really bad at this YouTube stuff for now. But Instagram is where it's at, and I will happily listen to any of your tracks and give some feedback if possible, and if it fits the schedule I'm currently in when you're sending. But anyways, thank you for stopping by this video. If you liked it, do whatever. I'm not gonna be the guy who tells you to push a lot of buttons. So do whatever you do. Thank you for stopping by. Until next time. Ah, das ist gut, ja.